The Galactic Council had existed for 12,000 years. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had survived wars that burned entire star systems to ash. They had negotiated peace between species that breathed fire and species that lived in the cold vacuum of space. Nothing surprised them anymore. Nothing scared them anymore. Then humans arrived. Ambassador of the Empire still remembered the first contact. His people were ancient and powerful. They stood 8 feet tall with thick scales that could stop most weapons. They had conquered 40 star systems and ruled with iron claws. When the primitive radio signals from Earth reached their sensors, they laughed. Another young species to add to their collection. Another world to bring under their protection, as they called it. The first ship entered Earth's solar system with confidence. It never returned. The humans had not even developed faster-than-light travel yet. They were still fighting among themselves. But when they saw the alien vessel approaching their planet, they stopped fighting each other immediately. Within 6 hours, every nuclear weapon on Earth was pointed at the sky. Within 12 hours, they had launched everything they had at the approaching ship. They had shields. They had armor. They had technology thousands of years more advanced. None of it mattered when 300 nuclear warheads hit them at the same time. Ambassador was part of the second contact team. This time they came in peace. They came with translators and gifts and treaties. They came with fear hidden behind their scales. The humans smiled at them with those strange flat teeth and welcomed them to Earth, but saw the truth in their eyes. These creatures were not afraid. They were not impressed. They looked at them the same way a predator looked at potential prey. That was 50 years ago. Now humans had faster-than-light travel. Now humans had colonies on 12 worlds. Now humans sat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights, and every other species watched them with barely hidden terror. High Commander of the Collective studied the reports on her screen. Her species resembled Earth insects, with hard shells and multiple limbs. They were warriors by nature, born with the instinct to fight and conquer. They had never feared anyone. Until humans. The report in front of her described a border incident. A patrol had encountered a human cargo ship in disputed space. The patrol consisted of 12 trained warriors in full combat armor. The human ship had a crew of 4 civilians. One of the humans was a grandmother transporting medical supplies to a colony. The grandmother had killed 8 before the rest surrendered. She had used a fire extinguisher, a piece of metal pipe, and her bare hands. When reinforcements arrived, they found her serving tea to the surviving and complaining about how the fight had made her late for her appointment. Closed the report and rubbed her eyes with 2 of her hands. This was the problem with humans. They were not just dangerous. They were unpredictably dangerous. Their baseline level of violence was higher than most species' elite soldiers. And they did not even know it. Humans thought they were normal. They thought everyone in the galaxy had evolved on a death world where everything tried to kill everything else. They thought everyone had bones that could heal and blood that clotted and immune systems that fought off disease. They thought everyone could run for hours without rest or survive temperature changes that would kill most species. They were wrong. Earth was a nightmare. It was a planet of fire and ice, of earthquakes and hurricanes, of predators and disease. Any species that evolved there had to be tough beyond measure. Humans were survivors of the ultimate trial by combat. They were the children of a world that hated them. And this was what terrified the galaxy. The average human was already more dangerous than most alien soldiers. Human children learned to play games that would be considered combat training on other worlds. Human elderly could outwork young adults from softer planets. Human civilians carried around what they called pocket knives, but what were actually deadly weapons. The Galactic Council had learned to accept this reality. They had adjusted their treaties and their expectations. They had classified Earth as a Class 12 and given humans wide berth. There was peace. There was understanding. There was a careful balance. Then the war started. They came from beyond the galaxy. Nobody knew where they originated or what they wanted. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply arrived and started consuming. They ate planets. They devoured stars. They turned entire civilizations into fuel for their endless hunger. The Galactic Council mobilized everything they had. Fleets that had not moved in centuries lifted off. Armies that had only existed on paper suddenly became real. Every species sent their best warriors to the front lines. It was not enough. They were not alive in any way the galaxy understood. They did not fear death because they did not truly live. They could not be intimidated because they had no minds to intimidate. They just kept coming, wave after wave, an endless tide of darkness. High Commander led the defense of the system. She had 40,000 warriors and 200 ships. When they arrived, she had nothing. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, was floating in a damaged escape pod, watching her fleet burn. That was when the humans arrived. Not their regular fleet, not their normal soldiers, something else entirely, something nobody in the galaxy had ever seen before. Ambassador was on the council station when the human message came through. He read it 3 times before he believed it. Then he called an emergency session of the council. The human representative stood before them. His name was General Stone. He was old for a human, with gray hair and scars covering his face. He walked with a cane because he had lost a leg in some previous war, but his eyes burned with something that made scales itch. General Stone explained it calmly. Humanity had always known this day might come. They had always prepared for the worst. While other humans spread across the stars and built colonies and traded with aliens, a select group had done nothing but train for war. They were called the Guardians. They were humans who had dedicated their entire lives to a single purpose. They were the elite of the elite, the warriors among warriors, the very best that Earth's death world could produce. And they had never been deployed before now. The Council did not understand at first. Humans were already terrifying. What could possibly make these Guardians different? General Stone smiled and felt cold fear run through his blood. The Guardians, Stone explained, were what happened when you took humans and removed all their limits. Normal humans held back. Normal humans played nice. Normal humans tried to fit in with the galaxy. The Guardians did not. They were stronger because they trained every day from childhood. They were faster because they had modified their bodies with technology that would kill lesser species. They were smarter because they spent decades studying nothing but combat and tactics. And they were completely without mercy because they had been raised to understand one simple truth. They were the last line of defense. If they were deployed, it meant everything else had already failed. It meant there was nothing left to save except survival itself. The first Guardian unit deployed to the system the next day. High Commander watched from a rescue ship as 12 humans dropped onto a hive. She had seen berserkers in combat. She had witnessed the legendary death squads. She had studied every warrior culture in the galaxy. She had never seen anything like the Guardians. They moved like liquid death. They killed like machines without souls. They worked together so perfectly that they seemed to share one mind. They had consumed civilizations. They had destroyed fleets. They had never faced anything like these 12 humans. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the hive was silent. The creatures that had been unstoppable were now dead. 12 humans stood among mountains of alien corpses, barely breathing hard. The leader of the unit was a woman named Colonel Sarah. She was small even for a human, with dark hair tied back in a simple knot. She walked up to his rescue ship and saluted. Asked her how they had won. How had 12 warriors defeated an enemy that had destroyed armies? Colonel smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had paid a price that could never be repaid. Humans, she explained, were not just dangerous because of their bodies. They were dangerous because of their minds. They could think of violence in ways that other species simply could not imagine. They could push themselves beyond any reasonable limit and keep going. They could sacrifice everything, including their own survival, for victory. The Guardians were humans who had learned to weaponize that gift completely. They did not hesitate. They did not question. They did not stop. They were pure purpose wrapped in human flesh. And they were just getting started. Over the next year, the war turned around. Guardian units deployed across the galaxy, always at the worst points, always where defeat seemed certain. They never lost. They could not be broken. They fought with a dedication that bordered on insanity. Other species watched in horror and in awe. They realized that their scales meant nothing. They understood that their warrior traditions were games compared to this. Even species that had thought themselves superior to humanity felt their confidence crumble. Because the Guardians showed them the truth. Regular humans were already death-world monsters walking among the stars. The Guardians were what those monsters became when they stopped pretending to be civilized. They were destroyed in the Battle of Empty Sky. 200 Guardians fought against the core of the alien invasion. 83 survived. They were gone forever. Ambassador attended the victory ceremony. He watched the surviving Guardians receive their medals and honors. They stood quietly, their faces showing nothing. They had saved the galaxy, but they did not seem happy about it. Later asked General Stone about this. Why did the Guardians not celebrate? Why did they not seem proud? Stone sighed. He explained that the Guardians understood something that others did not. They were monsters. They knew it. They had made themselves into weapons, and weapons did not deserve celebration. They had done what was necessary, but they took no joy in it. That, Stone said, was what made them truly terrifying. They were not cruel. They were not evil. They were simply willing to become whatever the situation required. They would cross any line and pay any price because they had accepted that someone had to. Thought about this for a long time. He realized that humans had always scared the galaxy, but he finally understood why. It was not their strength or their speed or their endurance. It was their choice. Humans chose to be dangerous. They chose to be prepared. They chose to protect those they cared about with absolute commitment. The Guardians were simply that choice made visible. They were humanity's promise that no matter how dark things became, there would always be someone willing to stand against the darkness. The galaxy had feared humans before. Now they understood that fear was wisdom, but they also understood something else. Humans were not just terrifying. They were also guardians of life itself. They would fight for others with the same intensity they fought for themselves. The galaxy was safe now, safe because monsters had chosen to be heroes. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other threats waited. They did not know it yet, but they had already lost, because humanity was watching, and the Guardians were ready.